Hello and welcome. This is News Now. I'm Shibani Gharat. Now, US President Donald Trump took to his social media site, Truth Social, to warn the Iranian leadership. Trump said, and I quote, "A whole civilization will die today, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it will probably. However, now that we have a complete and total regime change where different, smarter and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long, complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran." And the quote ends right there. Whatever he tweeted on Truth Social was this threat issued. And this is not the first time, mind you, that President Donald Trump has issued a threat to the Iranian leadership. To discuss this, we are joined in by my colleague, Sumita Karir. Sumita, tell us more. How do we read this threat? Is it the final one, or, there are more to come? Because President Trump has only been issuing threats over the past couple of weeks to Iranian leadership.
Well, I think the best person to answer that question is going to be President Donald Trump himself, and the strategy that he has in mind as far as these threats are concerned. But is this going to be a case of something actually being done, according to what President Donald Trump is stating, that a whole civilization is going to die tonight, never to be brought back again? Or is this a case that is going to relate to the taco effect, that is Trump only chickens out? And that is something that we've seen with respect to his threats, whether it's related to tariffs over the past 1 year or it's related to some other aspects. But of course, we are seeing an escalation of hostilities between Iran and the United States. In fact, JD Vance, the country's vice president, has also stated that there are two pathways. He said that very shortly this war will conclude, and we hope that Iran is smart. So, of course, you do see the pressure tactic that's coming in from President Trump, who is putting pressure. And then you have Vance on the other side, who's playing the good cop. In fact, he's saying that Iran is smart, and we do hope that there is some sort of a good resolution.
Right. Sumita was here discussing Trump's threat to Iran, where he just said on Truth Social that a whole civilization will die today. It is the end to, the 47 years of corruption, on atrocities on the people. And we will find out more tonight. 47 years of extortion, corruption, death will finally end. And mind you, this is not President Trump's first threat to on his social media platform, Truth Social. Prior to this, he had also mentioned how, he will send Iran back to stone ages. And all of these threats are, responded by, many embassies around the world, Iranian embassies around the world, on a lighter note, mocking him back for his threats on his social media platform. But US Vice President JD Vance has said that the ball is in Iran's court, and they are expecting a response from Iran tonight.
Fundamentally, the ball is in the Iranians' court. Now, I think the president has talked about this. One thing I will say is that the Iranians were not the fastest negotiators before the war started, and they are certainly not the fastest negotiators now. So we recognize there's some delay sometimes in transmitting messages from one person to another, but we feel confident that we can get a response, whether it's positive or negative. We're going to get a response from the Iranians by 8 o'clock tonight. I hope they make the right response, because what we really want is we want a world where oil and gas is flowing freely, where people can afford to heat their homes and cool their homes, where people can afford to transport themselves to work. That's not going to happen if the Iranians are engaged in acts of economic terrorism. So they've got to know we've got tools in our toolkit that we so far haven't decided to use. The President of the United States can decide to use them, and he will decide to use them if the Iranians don't change their course of conduct.
Now, Sumita, my colleague Sumita is joining us again on the show. And Sumita, over to you. A whole civilization will die tonight is what President Trump says. Prior to this, he had mentioned that, he'll send Iran back to the Stone Ages. Before that, you will be living in a hell, is what he had mentioned. Open the, with an abuse in the Truth Social post. He had mentioned that open the Strait of Hormuz. So some of these threats have been taken very lightly by some of the embassies, Iranian embassies around the world. So how do you expect a response from Iran, given that there is already a lingering 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time deadline on them?
So as far as the response by Iran is concerned, remember, they have been issuing rebuttals. They have been issuing their responses on the basis of what the United States and Israel have been talking about. In fact, the IRGC has warned that they would retaliate beyond the Middle East and deprive Washington and its allies of oil and gas if the U.S. crossed a red line, any red line. That is a statement that the IRGC carried. It was carried on the state television. In fact, the statement also spoke about the fact that the Revolutionary Guards once again declared that if the American terrorist army crossed the red lines, and I quote this, our response will go beyond the region. They've also stated that they would target infrastructure to deprive the United States and its allies of oil and gas in the region for years. And America's regional partners should also know, that's what IRGC says, that until today we have exercised great restraint for the sake of good neighborliness. We have some reservations in choosing targets for retaliation, but all these reservations have since been removed. So even though the United States president may talk about wiping off a whole civilization or something that he spoke about earlier as well, taking Iran to Stone Ages, he has to keep in mind that there will be retaliatory attacks by Iran. Whether that is going to lead to any opening of the Strait of Hormuz, we can't say for sure. But one thing is for sure, that the brunt of what happens in just a few hours from now at 5:30 a.m. IST, the brunt will be borne by the world in terms of the economy slowing down. There will be impact definitely on the energy markets, energy prices, and of course on the GCC countries as well. Now, as far as GCC countries are concerned, we do know that Qatar has said that the region is close to a point where escalation cannot be controlled. So, of course, escalation needs to be controlled. And in fact, some sort of a way to balance out President Donald Trump. We've also heard the commentary that's coming from President JD Vance. He said that there are two pathways. Very shortly, this war will conclude, and we hope that Iran is smart. He's also stated that we do hope that it will get to good resolution. And the Karg Island does not represent a change in strategy. He has reiterated the deadline once again for Iran is 8 p.m. So, of course, if you see the commentary that's coming from both the sides, President Donald Trump playing the bad cop, JD Vance playing the good cop, all of this is essentially anchored towards one thing. That one thing is that there should be resolution, there should be reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has made consistently that the Strait of Hormuz is open for countries that are friendly, that are not attacking Iran's sovereignty. And of course, with respect to the resolution or the talks between the two sides are concerned, Iran has again and again maintained that they don't want a temporary ceasefire. What they want is a permanent solution, a permanent end to the conflict, a permanent end to hostility. So all eyes now are on that 5:30 a.m. IST deadline, and that will clarify what the United States is going to do next, and in response to that, what Iran's response is going to be.
Sumita, thank you so much for the details and the update. Here, as my colleague Sumita mentioned, JD Vance is playing the good cop, President Donald Trump is playing the bad cop, and of course, they are posting away, tweeting away on their social media platforms. But the larger question is, where is the Iranian leadership? Now, as per reports, Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is reportedly unconscious and receiving urgent medical treatment in the city of Qom. Soon after US and Israel struck Iran, Iran acknowledged that Mojtaba was wounded in the same airstrike that killed his father, Ali Khamenei. He has been missing from the public eye ever since. Now, Mojtaba's absence is raising questions over who is actually running the country at a time of the escalating war. Now, joining us to discuss, this threat by President Trump that just came in like a few minutes ago, we have Suresh Goel, who's a former diplomat, who's joining us on the show today on ET Now. Mr. Goel, thank you so much for joining us. First up, your reaction to President Trump's grave warning to Iran. wiping off an entire civilization. How do you read this particular warning? Because this is not the first of its kind that has come in from President Trump on his platform, Truth Social. He has earlier issued several warnings asking Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz or face dire consequences, or sending them back to Stone Ages. So how do you read this one particular warning, considering that there is also lingering 8 p.m. EST deadline for this?
Yes, I know. It's very unfortunate, though, I would say, really, because these are very serious matters in terms of the objectives of what Trump is looking for and what Iran wants. Iran obviously wants a permanent settlement and security for itself. And Trump, for some reason, thinks that the nuclear program is still continuing. So it requires serious negotiations rather than war. And therefore issuing warnings of the kind that we will obligate Iran to the Stone Age are not very helpful. However, be that as it may, I don't think it's going to be easy to really do that, even if he wants to. Obligating a country to the Stone Age could be interpreted as a warning of a nuclear war or warning of really so much of aggression, attack, that nothing left in the country. Either way, it is not a very good way of putting things, really.
What exactly, if you can help us understand and give us an understanding in your position as a former diplomat, on what is happening behind the scenes in these final hours, as you know, the world is watching and looking towards this deadline, which is the 8 p.m. EST deadline, 5:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. What is going to happen in the final hours, according to you?
Very difficult to forecast. President Trump has given these kind of ultimata and the warnings before. He has fixed the deadline before, and he has changed the deadline. So I do not know how serious he is about this deadline. But either way, one cannot completely ignore a possibility that he is serious this time about the deadline. So my own thought is that behind the scenes, there are offers and being exchanged. There are conversations going on, even if not directly. And President Trump may eventually agree to some kind of an understanding, as with Iran. I do hope that it will not come to the kind of warning that President Trump is issuing. Conversations are happening. Therefore, I'm quite optimistic that sometime, maybe not sooner, but later, some kind of an understanding will prevail.
Mr. Goel, thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now. Well, on that note, it is time for us to slip into a very short break. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.